Shalom, Bethel family. It is nice to speak to you. It's Thursday. It's been a long, harrowing week since last Shabbat. Terrible tragedy in Pittsburgh. But as that terrible tragedy was unfolding, here at Bethel, we had services, and I delivered these remarks on Parshat VaYerah, and maybe they're not totally inappropriate for the moment. I started out talking about this idea that two people can see the same event and yet see it totally differently. We're all familiar with the phenomenon, right? It's been well studied, and we know that that this happens. It might not even be a surprise at this point, but we've come to the point where this happens enough, I think, in our society is so split that we might have a conversation with someone and we walk away saying, did they just see the same thing that I saw? But the truth is, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, right? Because what I really want to talk about today is another phenomenon that's even more amazing. And that's the idea that we can look at something ourselves and seeing it in two totally different ways. What do I mean? That you see the same events and see it in two different ways with two different sets of eyes. Well, take for this example. You're driving and you come to the street corner and there's a guy with a cardboard sign that says he's hungry. And you try your best not to make eye contact. You just don't want to deal with it. And the next day you come to the same street corner, same guy, same sign. And this day you roll down your window and you give him a quarter. What's the difference? Same events, exactly, but somehow you're seeing it with different eyes. Or maybe there's the idea that we see a natural disaster takes place. It may be one natural disaster, we're moved, it sounds terrible, we send a check to try and help people. And then the very next month or year or whatever, there's another natural disaster, and this time we don't want to give. We say, serves them right for living too close to the water or in a place prone to wildfires or whatever it is. We just find some rationale to not give. Same basic events, two different sets of eyes, and those are our own eyes. Right? How are our own eyes seeing such different things? And I think it's a really important question, and here's why. Because I hear people say all the time, the world seems so much crazier than it's ever been before, right? That the world is so much worse than it's ever been before. And even with what happened last Shabbat, I'm not sure that that's true. I'm not sure that there are more bad things that happen than before, that there are more people in dire straits than in times past. I wonder if we're not instead seeing it with different eyes, and that those different eyes are not helping us in living fulfilling and meaningful lives. And so I was pondering that question, and there's an answer maybe, or at least some insight to it at the very beginning of this Parshat VaYerah. Right? We see at the very beginning of it, Abraham is sitting at his tent in the heat of the day, we're told, and he's waiting ostensibly for passerbys to come and show his hospitality, which he does. But we're told in the Midrash, right, because the very end of the last Parsha, Lech Lecha, God commanded Abraham to have a circumcision, to make the mark of the Brit, right? And so we're told in the Midrash that he's actually here sitting before his tent recovering from his recent surgery, right? And who should come along but these three, we're not sure, right? It actually says twice. The Parsha is called VaYerah. And the first time we're told VaYerah, that God appeared to Abraham. And then we're told, again, VaYerah. And Abraham saw, and three men, human men, were coming towards him. Well, which was it? Was it God who appeared before him? Or was it three men? It seems to be in the very same instant. How could it be? Right? Well, there's actually a lot of interpretations why the word VaYerah is repeated, how Abraham saw these two things at once. But the one that I want to highlight in this teaching is one proposed by a commentator known as the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, a rabbi in Poland in the 1500s. And he explains that, normally Abraham has no problem perceiving God's presence or the presence of angels, quite frankly. It has happened to him many times in his life that he's been visited by angels or visited by God, and he should have facility, and we've never read that he's had any problem in the past. So what's different here? That why all of a sudden is he confused about whether these are ordinary human men or harbingers of the Almighty, or in fact the appearance of the presence of God, God's self? And Shnei Luchot HaBrit answers that Abraham's emotional and intellectual vision perceived God, but his physical vision perceived them as men. And what a fascinating idea. In the 1500s, this rabbi had this idea that we had two different sets of eyes, the emotional, intellectual vision and the physical vision. And yet, the Shnei Luchot HaBrit doesn't tell us exactly why suddenly Abraham is finding that his physical vision is overwhelming his spiritual vision. But I think I have an idea, right? And it goes back to that midrash about why Abraham was sitting there. Right? It goes back to his recent surgery. Abraham is experiencing pain and discomfort. And inevitably, after we experience pain or trauma, our eyes change. And we become caught up in everything physical. Right? We don't have space for the spiritual. Right? That vision becomes cloudy, and it recedes as we are caught up in our physical selves. There's a powerful message in the fact that even Abraham, arguably the most spiritually perceptive person in the history of humanity, even he, when he is in pain, has trouble sensing the presence of the Almighty. Remember, this is Abraham who heard God calling in a world that didn't even have the concept of God. And even he has his spiritual vision clouded by recent trauma. But Abraham, being Abraham, ultimately he overcomes his confusion and he gets back to that spiritual, less self-absorbed place. And how does he do it? It's an important question, because maybe if we can figure out how he gets from that cloudy spiritual vision, from that physical fascination, that inability to see anything but the physical self, and move to that spiritual vision, if we can figure out how he did it, maybe we can do it ourselves as well. Maybe we can then see the greater forces at work in the world. And it's funny, the answer, in fact, is very simple, and it's right there in the text. And it's what I would call a grand bargain. Right? That not only will add that spirituality to our lives if we can do it, but also makes the world better for others. Right? What does Avram immediately do when he's clouded with this physical vision, when his pain and his trauma has him so overwhelmed that he can only protect himself and see human beings in front of him even when God is present? He immediately jumps up and starts serving others. Even in his weakened condition, he jumps up, begs these visitors to come to his tent, washes their feet, has his wife Sarah prepare a meal and feeds them, asks them to stay over for the night, right? In practicing stepping outside of himself for others, right, he naturally has his vision evolve from self-centered, self-absorbed, looking at his own pain, to focusing outward on others. And that's all it takes for us to have that same spiritual vision. It's not always easy, but it is when we serve others that we perceive how much more is going on in the world than what is affecting us at any given moment. And it is that set of lenses that makes the world look a lot better and make a lot more sense than it might seem to at the moment. Look, we just experienced this with the trauma of the massacre on Saturday. It is our natural inclination to look inward, to say that only we can protect ourselves, to hide away in small places. But what we learned from Abraham, that's exactly the wrong reaction. What's called for is us to reach out, to serve others, to recognize all those who are out there trying to help us. If it is more stability that we are seeking in our lives and a sense of safety and a sense of meaning and purpose, the trick is not to wrap ourselves up in a corner of self-protection or even to go looking for divine assistance just for us. What we learn from Abraham is that the key is service to others. So if we want the world to make more sense, if we want to have that spiritual vision, what should we do? Go volunteer somewhere. Make yourself an essential part of your spiritual community. Go out of your way for someone else, even if it means experiencing personal discomfort. That's when the world will start to make sense. And that's the grand bargain. When we do that, with a little help from our community, we can experience the beautiful, spiritual, purposeful world that Abraham and Sarah left us, and at the same time will make the world better. Right? In order to get our own better spiritual vision, all we have to do is make the world better for everyone. That is a grand bargain, if I ever heard one, and that is how we should be reacting. That is how we should be moving forward in this next Shabbat, and so many Shabbats forward. I wish us all a Shabbat of peace, and wish you a Shabbat Shalom.